12. Steve Sandvik. In November 2022, an employee of the Mower County Sheriff's Office in southern Minnesota reported their suspicions that Sheriff Steve Sandvik was drunk on the job. Sandvik was also accused of harassment and other questionable conduct. A peace officer who's trained to identify signs of intoxication determined that Sandvik had been drinking that day. The conclusion was reportedly based on the officer's observation of the sheriff's bloodshot eyes, the smell of alcohol, and Sandvik's demeanor and manner of speech. In an email to the Globe, County Administrator Trish Harron said that the sheriff was advised that he'd be pulled over and tested for alcohol if he got behind the wheel. So, someone else drove him home that day, and an investigation was launched 2 days later. A few weeks after the incident, Sandvik took a leave of absence. He told the Globe that he was taking time off for medical reasons and denied being drunk on the job. An independent law firm tasked with carrying out the investigation learned from employees that Sandvik was in a good mood on the day in question, but that several employees noticed he didn't seem like himself. In its findings, the law firm concluded that the misconduct allegations against Sandvik were unsubstantiated, but that he was drunk on the job that day. The report concluded that his condition was triggered by post-traumatic stress disorder. Most of the documents relating to the case are being withheld from the public. Emails obtained by ABC6 included allegations that the sheriff had behaved strangely on at least 2 previous occasions, including during the local Christmas-time Shop with a Cop event. But apparently, these claims were never investigated. In early 2023, County Administrator Harron said that Sandvik underwent the recommended treatment protocols and made tremendous progress on his health, and since then, he's returned to work full-time. Shortly after Harron released the update, ABC6 obtained documents detailing Sandvik's threats to sue Harron for speaking publicly about his condition, treatment, and other personal business. An attorney sent Harron a cease and desist letter on the sheriff's behalf and warned that he'd seek up to $15,000 for each alleged violation of his privacy. So, since then, county representatives have remained tight-lipped on the situation. 11. Paula Valentino Rincon Delgado. While responding to a call about an accident at a car wash in Boca Raton, Florida in December 2022, Palm Beach County deputies found a young woman sitting next to a damaged Toyota Highlander. Identified as 20-year-old Paula Valentino Rincon Delgado, she was an employee at the car wash and had immigrated to the United States from Colombia. And also present at the scene were the business's manager and the owner of the Toyota. Speaking with law enforcement through an interpreter, Delgado explained that she had finished her work shift at around 6 p.m. Then 3 hours later, she met some friends at her home before returning to the car wash, where she took the keys to the Toyota. She drove the vehicle to a nearby gas station for cigarettes and ended up crashing the SUV. Delgado said that the accident happened in Boca Raton, but she couldn't remember exactly where, and that she called her manager right after it happened. According to a report, a deputy noticed the smell of booze while he talked to the young woman. He also noted that her eyes were glassy and red, her speech was slurred, and she was swaying back and forth. The car wash manager told investigators that he received a panicked call from Delgado at about midnight. He said he found her sitting in the damaged vehicle at a parking lot near his business. And after hearing the employee's version of events, the manager drove the Toyota back to the car wash. He then called the Highlander's owner, who'd left the vehicle at the car wash to be serviced, and informed them that the SUV had been involved in an accident. The vehicle's owner told the police that he didn't know Delgado and that he didn't give her permission to drive the Highlander. He called 911 because the crash involved his vehicle, and he wanted to make sure law enforcement didn't think he was the person responsible. Delgado performed poorly on a field sobriety test and refused a breathalyzer. In the end, she was charged with grand theft auto, DUI, leaving the scene of a crash, and driving without a valid license. 10. Linda Bollinger. In March 2014, a 55-year-old nurse from Muncie, Indiana, named Linda Bollinger lost her job at a nursing home for being drunk at work. According to state authorities, her blood alcohol content was 0.258, more than twice the legal limit for driving. Following Bollinger's termination, the Indiana State Board of Nursing revoked her license. But it was hardly her first brush with the law in regards to her alcohol use. Her long list of booze-related offenses began in 2008, when she was suspended from her job at a hospital amid allegations that she showed up at work drunk at 7 a.m. Co-workers reportedly raised the alarm after noticing that Bollinger's eyes were glassy and that her breath smelled like alcohol. A report of the incident quoted Bollinger as saying that she'd been out drinking until 4 a.m. that morning, and so she was charged with drunk driving and resisting law enforcement. In the end, Bollinger came to an agreement with the nursing board that allowed her to keep her license. But unfortunately, she was let go from yet another job the following year for showing up to work with alcohol on her breath. In late 2022, Bollinger was on probation for the DUI, as well as reporting to work after drinking and failing to disclose to a new employer that she'd been let go from a previous job for alcohol-related reasons. And as a result, she was fired from another nursing home for allegedly coming to work while drunk. 4 months later, Bollinger experienced her final job loss that led to her license being revoked. And while she likely legitimately struggles with drinking, the system seems to have concluded that she didn't make good use of her chances to get her life back on track. 9. Dr. Jason Lane. In October 2013, a San Diego-based physician and surgeon named Dr. Jason Lane was so drunk at work that he collapsed and was taken to the emergency room. He had a blood alcohol content of 0.39, nearly 5 times the legal limit, and was fired from his job a few days later. According to a formal complaint filed by the California Medical Board, Lane had argued with his wife about his drinking the night before he fell at work. He drank 2 bottles of wine before bed, then woke up during the night and drank 8 more ounces of the beverage. Knowing that his drinking had gotten out of control, Lane completed a 7-day detox and then entered a 30-day rehab program. After that, he finished a 6-week outpatient treatment. He then continued focusing on his sobriety and mental health while attending AA meetings 5 to 6 times a week. In the meantime, he underwent exhaustive proceedings in an attempt to keep his medical license. He admitted that his binge drinking tendencies dated back to his college years and that the habit worsened after he served in the military and began struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder. Lane's drinking was reportedly at its worst when he collapsed on the job, and by then he was drinking at least 1 bottle of wine daily and experiencing withdrawal symptoms throughout his workday. But he denied ever drinking on the job, even though he admitted to showing up at work drunk. The medical board eventually decided to give Lane a second chance at his career under a set of extremely strict rules. He was put on probation for 10 years, which includes regular drug and alcohol testing, routine mental health treatment and screenings, active participation in a 12-step program, and being under the supervision of another doctor. And as another consequence, Lane was also barred from overseeing physicians' assistants. 8. William T. Marshall. When an aging former judge's relatives filed legal petitions for guardianship over his finances and assets in 2019, it opened up a huge can of worms that led to calls for thousands of cases he ruled on to be reviewed. According to the lawsuit, William T. Marshall's finances were left in shambles due to his advanced alcoholism after he retired from his position in Scioto County, Ohio in 2018. The plaintiffs alleged that Marshall had been hospitalized multiple times due to his drinking and argued that he was unable to avoid drinking on his own due to the magnitude of his addiction. The suit also claimed that any continued drinking at that point could potentially be fatal to the ailing senior. Marshall's family accused him of showing up to work drunk countless times and often failing to go to work due to his drinking over his 15-year career. During that time, he presided over more than 2,700 cases that ended with prison sentences or other forms of court supervision. The alcohol-related allegations called into question whether these cases should be reviewed for signs that intoxication affected Marshall's rulings. The judge's history showed plenty of signs that his lifestyle was problematic. Back in 2013, he was convicted of driving under the influence after wrecking his car while drunk behind the wheel. And what's even more disturbing is that at least 3 women implicated Marshall for his alleged involvement in a large-scale human trafficking operation that a former city councilman is currently facing charges in connection with. Marshall denied the trafficking allegations and fought back against his family's accusations. Then, in 2020, he tried, unsuccessfully, to have his law license reinstated. 7. Dr. Robert Gerlich. When a hygiene dentist in Long Island, New York, noticed that her boss reeked of booze and had administered Novocaine to the wrong side of a patient's mouth one day in early 2013, she did the right thing and mentioned her suspicions to someone who could help. In a statement to police, Kimberly Curtis said that when she pointed out Dr. Robert Gerlich's Novocaine mistake, he simply ordered for the other side of the patient's mouth to be injected, leaving their entire mouth numb. Curtis also claimed that the dentist had shown up to work drunk in the past, and on one occasion she called Dr. Gerlich's wife because he was allegedly so intoxicated that he could barely stand on his own. During the more recent incident involving the anesthesia, Curtis texted a co-worker who called the police. She said she was especially nervous after seeing her boss use a drill that requires an extremely steady hand. After noticing that something seemed off about Gerlich's behavior, Curtis began paying more attention to his movements. Then, just moments after she saw him drinking out of a squeeze bottle, she said he walked past her emitting a strong alcohol odor. She claimed that she looked inside the bottle when she got a chance and that she was sure it was filled with vodka. According to Suffolk County Police, Gerlich initially denied being drunk, but admitted to having a few beers during lunch. But while riding in the back of a squad car on his way to deal with his arrest, he allegedly confessed to sipping vodka all day. And as a result, he was charged with misdemeanor reckless endangerment. It was a disappointing situation, considering Gerlich's good reputation up until that point. And while it's unclear exactly what happened with the case, it appears as though it was sorted out at some point, and that he's still practicing dentistry today. 6. Jessica Sue Proctor. Like many school districts throughout the US, the Iredell-Statesville School District in North Carolina has been affected by the ongoing national teacher shortage. So, to alleviate the problem, the district utilized the services of a company called the Stepping Stones Group, which helps to fill staffing voids by providing temporary teachers. In early 2023, school officials received a complaint accusing a newly hired temporary teacher of possibly being drunk on the job. The tipster accused 41-year-old Jessica Sue Proctor of smelling like alcohol during her second day on the job. Proctor was pulled from the classroom and brought down to the school's office, where it was determined that she was, in fact, intoxicated. She also allegedly had an empty bottle of wine and an insulated cup full of wine in her possession. Needless to say, the new job didn't work out. In a statement, the school district applauded the employee who came forward and reported Proctor's behavior after they noticed that something was off. And in the end, the terminated teacher was charged with misdemeanor counts of alcohol possession on a school campus and child neglect. 5. Lacey Freeze. A 39-year-old nurse from Sioux County, Iowa, named Lacey Freeze was accused of being drunk at work in 2022, amid reports that she was behaving strangely and using profanity. According to the complaint, Free appeared to be having trouble concentrating and was even seen dozing off on the job. 2 weeks later, Freeze was accused of buying alcohol during her shift, even though she was acting normal that day. She was sent home for this, but she was supposedly seen buying booze again later that same night. The Iowa Board of Nursing charged Freeze with excessive use of alcohol in a manner that might impair a nurse's ability to practice the profession with reasonable skill and safety. She then agreed to surrender her license. According to the Waterloo Cedar Falls Courier, Freeze had no previous disciplinary incidents on her record in the 7 years she spent working at the hospital. But she did have 3 DUI convictions from 2014, 2015, and 2016, along with a misdemeanor theft conviction for allegedly stealing $240 from a taxi driver in 2016. Then, in early 2023, she was charged with DUI yet again, after she was reportedly found slumped over in her car in a Target parking lot. 4. Kevin Mcgovy. While transporting a dialysis patient to treatment in Fairburn, Georgia in 2021, an ambulance suddenly veered off the shoulder of the road and fell into a ditch. The patient, 66-year-old Wilton Thomason Jr., was unrestrained in the back of the ambulance and died in the crash. Police accused the ambulance driver, 34-year-old Kevin Mcgovy, and his co-worker of trying to call an Uber to flee the scene. But after smelling alcohol on McCorvey's breath, a responding officer stopped the ambulance workers from leaving the scene and got the Georgia State Patrol involved. The suspect allegedly admitted to smoking pot, taking stimulants, and drinking a beer while driving. And as a result, he was charged with DUI, second-degree homicide by vehicle, failure to maintain lane, and possession of an open container. In June of 2023, authorities announced that McCorvey's case may go to trial in October. In another case of an ambulance driver being accused of operating under the influence, an emergency helicopter pilot named Aaron Fouquet was pulled over on his way to work in early 2023 after an officer saw him crossing the yellow center line. The incident happened in Elbert County, Colorado. According to the local sheriff's department, Fouquet was in his flight suit at the time of the traffic stop. He had a blood alcohol level of 0.08, the legal limit in most states, and was taken into custody on suspicion of driving while intoxicated. Shortly after the arrest, Fouquet resigned from his job. The case sparked questions about what would have happened if he'd made it to work that day. In a statement, his employer reassured the public that it tests its employees for drugs and alcohol at a higher rate than federal law required, and that there were measures in place to detect and prevent a drunk pilot from operating an aircraft. 3. Jeffrey Pupilli. During a random drug and alcohol screening in mid-2023, a 9-year veteran of the Terre Haute, Indiana Police Department named Jeffrey Pupilli allegedly tested positive when he was subjected to a breath alcohol test. The 33-year-old was transported to police headquarters and placed in a conference room, where a lieutenant reportedly observed the smell of booze and noticed that Pupilli's eyes seemed bloodshot. Meanwhile, the officer's superiors analyzed the software in his patrol car that records the driver's speed and other habits. And the findings revealed that the car hit speeds as high as 93 miles per hour during Pupilli's drive to work that day. According to a probable cause document, Pupilli's blood alcohol content initially tested at 0.596, more than 7 times the legal limit. He was well into the range that puts a person at risk of coma or death, which starts at 0.4. Pupilli took a second test, which came out at 0.5, and 15 minutes later, a third test showed a BAC of 0.446. By the time police obtained a warrant to draw the officer's blood 4 hours later, his BAC was at 0.125. He was placed on administrative leave and charged with operating a motor vehicle while intoxicated and endangering a person, as well as operating a vehicle with alcohol concentration equivalent to at least 0.08, but less than 0.15. Then, several weeks after his arrest, Pupilli resigned from the department. But at the moment, his criminal case is ongoing. 2. Angela Harkov. After noticing signs that their co-worker was intoxicated on the clock one day in 2017, employees at a daycare in West Des Moines, Iowa called the police. A responding officer observed that 43-year-old Angela Harkov's eyes were bloodshot and she was unable to stand on her own. There was also a strong alcohol odor coming from her water bottle. According to local station KCCI, the tipsy childcare worker admitted to keeping vodka in a water bottle and drinking it throughout her workday. Harkov had a blood alcohol content of 0.37, nearly 5 times the legal limit in Iowa, and a high enough level to put someone in the hospital. As a consequence, she was promptly fired from her job and arrested for child endangerment and public intoxication. Then, just when it appeared as though Harkov was on the road to putting the situation behind her, she showed up drunk to her sentencing with a BAC of 0.178. So, she was taken back to jail pending the outcome of a new substance abuse valuation. 1. Trisha Nelson. Usually, when police are called to a fast food restaurant in the middle of the night, there's a problem with a customer or the location's been targeted in a crime. But it was an employee who was accused of wrongdoing when law enforcement responded to a Taco Bell restaurant in Evansville, Indiana in April 2023. According to a report, officers observed two of the restaurant's employees, 35-year-old Trisha Nelson and an individual whose name was withheld, yelling at a car in the drive-thru. Other workers said that Nelson and the other suspect were found drinking in the bathroom while the drive-thru became backed up during a rush. After watching the security footage and seeing that something unusual was going on, the manager called the restaurant and asked for an explanation. And when she learned that Nelson and another worker were in the bathroom drinking, she gave the go-ahead to fire the pair. While confronting Nelson outside, officers noticed the distinct odor of alcohol. She allegedly tried walking away from the scene multiple times, but eventually consented to a breathalyzer and blew a 0.208, which is more than 2.5 times the legal blood alcohol limit in Indiana. Nelson was also accused of becoming combative with police while being taken into custody. According to an arrest affidavit, she tried pulling away and kicking one officer and elbowed another one in the face as they loaded her into the transport van. As a result, she was charged with battery of an officer, public intoxication, disorderly conduct, and resisting law enforcement. If you caught a co-worker you really liked and respected drinking on the job, would you report them for it knowing they'd probably be fired, or would you be willing to overlook it as a one-time thing and keep silent about it as long as they promise not to do it again? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.